Go to babies. Go to babies. Must be so tired. Good sleep, my baby girl. Hi everybody. Please hit the like and subscribe to watch my babies grow. Meow meow. Hello babies. Thank you. Hey baby boo. Hello. Oh, super sweet tiny baby. Ayan. Inices. Can I please have a little bit of space? I love you, baby. There you go. It's okay.
This is Audible.
Brought to you by Penguin.
Tell me, Muse.
This is Audible.
Brought to you by Penguin.
The Odyssey by Homer. Read by George Blagden. Book 1. Athena visits Telemachus. Tell me, Muse, the story of that resourceful man who was driven to wander far and wide after he had sacked the holy citadel of Troy. He saw the cities of many people, and he learnt their ways. He suffered great anguish on the high seas in his struggles to preserve his life and bring his comrades home. But he failed to save those comrades, in spite of all his efforts. It was their own transgression that brought them to their doom, for in their folly they devoured the oxen of Hyperion, the sun god, and he saw to it that they would never return. Tell us this story, goddess, daughter of Zeus, beginning at whatever point you will. All the survivors of the war had reached their homes by now, and so put the perils of battle and the sea behind them. Odysseus alone was prevented from returning to the home and wife he yearned for by that powerful goddess, the nymph Calypso, who longed for him to marry her, and kept him in her vaulted cave. Not even when the rolling seasons brought in the year which the gods had chosen for his homecoming to Ithaca was he clear of his troubles and safe among his friends. Yet all the gods pitied him, except Poseidon, who pursued the heroic Odysseus with relentless malice till the day when he reached his own country. Poseidon, however, was now gone on a visit to the distant Ethiopians, in the most remote part of the world, half of whom live where the sun goes down, and half where he rises. He had gone to accept a sacrifice of bulls and rams, and there he sat and enjoyed the pleasures of the feast. Meanwhile, the rest of the gods had assembled in the palace of Olympian Zeus, and the father of men and gods opened a discussion among them. He had been thinking of the handsome Aegisthus, whom Agamemnon's far-famed son Orestes killed, and it was with Aegisthus in his mind that Zeus now addressed the immortals. What a lamentable thing it is that men should blame the gods and regard us as the source of their troubles, when it is their own transgressions which bring them suffering that was not their destiny. Consider Aegisthus. It was not his destiny to steal Agamemnon's wife and murder her husband when he came home. He knew the result would be utter disaster, since we ourselves had sent Hermes, the keen-eyed giant slayer, to warn him neither to kill the man nor to court his wife. For Orestes, as Hermes told him, was bound to avenge Agamemnon as soon as he grew up, and thought with longing of his home. Yet with all his friendly counsel, Hermes failed to dissuade him. And now, Aegisthus has paid the final price for all his sins. The goddess of the flashing eyes, Athena, answered him at once. Father of ours, son of Kronos, king of kings, Aegisthus's end is just what he deserved. May all who act as he did share his fate. It is for Odysseus that my heart is wrung, the wise and unlucky Odysseus, who has been parted so long from all his friends, and is pining on a lonely island far away in the middle of the seas. The island is well wooded, and a goddess lives there, the child of the malevolent Atlas, who knows the depths of all the seas and supports the great columns that hold earth and sky apart. It is his daughter who is keeping the unhappy man from home, grieving. Day after day she does her best to banish Ithaca from his memory with soft, persuasive words. And Odysseus, who would give anything for the mere sight of the smoke rising up from his own land, can only yearn for death. Yet your Olympian heart is quite unmoved. Tell me, did the sacrifices he made you by the Argive ships on the plains of Troy find no favor in your sight? Why are you at odds with Odysseus, Zeus? Nonsense, my child, replied the gatherer of the clouds. How could I ever forget the admirable Odysseus? He is not only the wisest man alive, but has been the most generous in his offerings to the immortals who live in the wide heaven. It is Poseidon, sustainer of the earth, who is so implacable towards him on account of the Cyclops, godlike Polyphemus, the most powerful of the Cyclopes, whom Odysseus blinded. His mother was the nymph Thoosa, daughter of Phorcys, lord of the salt sea waves, and it was Poseidon who gave her this child when he slept with her in her cavern, hollowed by the sea. That is why, ever since Polyphemus was blinded, Poseidon the Earthshaker has kept Odysseus in exile, though he stops short of killing him. But come now, let all of us here together contrive a plan to bring him home. Poseidon will relent, for he will not be able to struggle on alone against the united will of the immortal gods. Bright-eyed Athena answered him, Father of ours, son of Kronos, king of kings, if it is now the pleasure of the blessed gods that the wise Odysseus shall return to Ithaca, let us send our messenger, Hermes the giant killer, to the isle of Ogygia, so that he can immediately tell Calypso, the nymph with the plaited tresses, of our unalterable decision that the patient Odysseus must now set out for home. Meanwhile, I myself will go to Ithaca to instill more spirit into Odysseus' son, and encourage him to call the long-haired Achaeans to an assembly, and speak his mind to that crowd of suitors who spend their time in the wholesale slaughter of his jostling sheep and his shambling cattle with their twisted horns. After that, I shall send him to Sparta and to sandy Pylos to seek news of his father's return. It is possible that he may hear of him, and so win the praise of men. This said, Athena bound on her feet her lovely sandals of untarnishable gold, which carried her with the speed of the wind over the water or the unending land, and seized her heavy spear with its point of sharpened bronze, the huge long spear with which she breaks the ranks of noble warriors, when she, the daughter of the mighty father, is angry with them. She flashed down from the heights of Olympus, and on reaching Ithaca, she took her stand on the threshold of the court in front of Odysseus' house, and to look like a visitor, she assumed the appearance of a family friend, the Taphian chieftain Mentes, bronze spear in hand. She found the insolent suitors sitting in front of the door on hides of oxen they themselves had slaughtered, playing with counters. Their squires and pages were busy round them, some blending wine and water in the mixing bowls, and others carving meat in lavish portions, and wiping down the tables with sponges before they set them ready. The first to see her was Telemachus, the godlike youth, who was sitting disconsolate among the suitors, imagining how his noble father might come back out of the blue, drive the suitors headlong from the house, and so regain his royal honours, and reign over his own once more. Full of these visions, he caught sight of Athena, and set off at once for the porch, ashamed that a stranger should be kept standing at the gates. He went straight up to his visitor, grasped his right hand, took his bronze spear, and gave him cordial greetings. "Welcome, friend," he said. "You can tell us what has brought you here when you have had some food." With this he led the way, and Pallas Athena followed. Once inside the lofty hall, he took her spear and put it by one of the great pillars in a Odysseus. He then conducted her to a beautiful carved chair, over which she spread a linen cloth, and seated her there with a stool for her feet. For himself, he drew up an ornate easy chair, well away from the crowd of suitors, for fear that his guest might take offence at the uproar, and finding himself in such ill-mannered company, turn with distaste from his meal. Moreover, he wished to question him about his absent father. Presently, a maid came with water in a fine golden jug, and poured it out over a silver basin for them to rinse their hands. She then drew a polished table to their side, and the faithful housekeeper brought some bread, and set it by them with a choice of delicacies, helping them liberally to all she could offer. Meanwhile, a steward served them plates of various meats he had selected from his board, and put gold cups beside them, which a steward filled with wine as he passed on his frequent rounds. The suitors came swaggering in and sat down in rows on the seats and chairs. Their squires poured water on their hands, and the maids put piles of bread in bowls beside them, while the pages filled the mixing bowls to the brim with wine. They helped themselves to the good things spread before them, and when all had satisfied their hunger and thirst, the suitors turned their thoughts to other activities, music and dancing, which add to the pleasures of a banquet. A herald brought a beautiful lyre, and handed it to Phineus, the minstrel whom they had forced into their service. He had just struck the first notes for some delightful song, when Telemachus spoke to bright-eyed Athena, with his head close to hers, so that the others could not hear. "Friend, will you be angry if I say something? How easy it is for that gang over there to think of nothing but music and songs. They are living free off another man, a man whose white bones are rotting in the rain upon some distant land, or rolling in the salt sea waves. One glimpse of him in Ithaca, and they pray for a faster pair of legs, rather than gold or rich clothes. But as it is, he has come to some dreadful end. No one on earth can bring us a spark of comfort by telling us that he'll come back. The day for that is gone forever. But tell me honestly who you are and where you come from. What is your native town? Who are your parents? And since you certainly cannot have come on foot, what kind of vessel brought you here? How did the crew come to land you in Ithaca? And who did they claim to be? And tell me the truth. I'd like to know. Is this your first visit to Ithaca, or has my father received you before? He used to entertain in our house just as often as he visited abroad." "I will tell you everything honestly," answered the bright-eyed goddess Athena. "My father was the wise Prince Anchialus. My own name is Mentes, and I am chieftain of the seafaring Taphians. As for my arrival in Ithaca, I came with my own ship and crew across the wine-dark sea. We are bound for the foreign port of Temesa with a cargo of gleaming iron, which we mean to trade for bronze. My ship is not berthed near the city, but over there by the open country, in Rethran Cove. I'd like you to explain. What is the banquet for? Who are all these people? How are you concerned? Is it a private dinner or a wedding feast? Obviously, these men have not brought their own food. At any rate, these banqueters in your house strike me as domineering and insolent. Any decent man would be disgusted at the sight of such disgraceful behavior." "My friend," the courteous Telemachus replied, "you may well ask. There was a time when this house was by way of being prosperous and respectable, when Odysseus was still among us. But since then, the gods have had other and more sinister designs, and they have served him as they never served a man before. They have made him vanish. His death itself, if he had fallen among his men at Troy or died in friendly arms at home with all his fighting done, would have caused me less distress. For in that case, the whole Achaean nation would have joined in building him a mound, and he would have left a great name for his son to inherit. But there was to be no famous end for him. The storm fiends have snatched him away. He has gone where he cannot be seen or found, and to me has left nothing but sorrow and tears. Nor is it only on his account that I am sighing and grieving, for the gods have gone on piling other troubles on my head. Of all the island chieftains in Dulichium, in Sami and in wooded Zakynthos, all the nobles in rocky Ithaca, there is not one that isn't courting my mother and wasting my property. As for her, though she hates the idea of remarrying, she cannot bring herself to take the final step of rejecting all the suitors or accepting one of them. Meanwhile, they are eating me out of house and home, and they will very soon destroy me too. Pallas Athena was moved. How disgraceful, she cried. Oh, how you miss your father, how much you need him to lay hands on this dissolute mob. If only he could show himself at this moment at the palace gates, with his helmet, his shield, and his 2 spears, just as he was when I first saw him, drinking and in happy mood in our house. That time he came up from Ephyra after a long visit to Murmurus' son, Ilus. He had sailed there in search of a deadly poison to smear on the bronze tips of his arrows, and Ilus, a God-fearing man, refused to supply him, but my father, who loved him dearly, gave it to him. Yes, if only Odysseus, as he then was, could confront these suitors, there'd be a quick death and a sorry wedding for them all. But such matters, of course, lie in the lap of the gods. They must decide whether or not he's to come back and settle accounts in his palace. Meanwhile, I do urge you to find some way of ridding the house of these suitors. Listen carefully to what I suggest. Tomorrow morning, call the Achaean lords to assembly and announce your decision to them all, asking the gods to witness what you say. Tell the suitors to leave and go home. As for your mother, if she is set on marrying, let her go back to her father's house. He is a man of consequence, and the family will arrange a marriage and see that she has a generous dowry, as is only right for a beloved daughter. For yourself, here is my advice. It is sound, and I hope you will take it. Choose your best ship, man her with 20 oarsmen, and set out to inquire after your long-absent father. Someone may be able to tell you about him, or you may pick up one of those rumors from Zeus that so often turn out to be true. Go to Pylos first and question the excellent Nestor, then on to Sparta to see auburn-haired Menelaus, since he was the last of the bronze-armored Achaeans to reach home. If you hear that your father is alive and on his way back, you should reconcile yourself to a year more of this wastage. But if you hear that he is dead and gone, return to your own country, build a mound with all the proper funeral rites, and give your mother in marriage to a new husband. This settled and done, you must think of some way of destroying this mob in your house, either by cunning or in open fight. You are no longer a child. You must put childish thoughts away. Have you not heard what a name Orestes made for himself in the world when he killed the cunning Aegisthus for murdering his noble father? You, my friend, and what a tall and splendid young man you have grown, must be as brave as Orestes. Then future generations will sing your praises. But my crew must be tired of waiting for me, and I must now go to my good ship. I leave the matter in your hands. Think over what I have said. Sir, said the thoughtful Telemachus, you have spoken to me out of the kindness of your heart like a father talking to his son, and I shall never forget your words. Though you are anxious to be on your way, stay a little longer so that you can bathe and refresh yourself. Then you can go to your ship in a happy frame of mind, taking with you as a keepsake from myself something precious and beautiful, the sort of present that one gives to a guest who has become a friend. No, said the bright-eyed goddess. I am eager to be on my way. Do not detain me now. As for the gift you kindly suggest, let me take it home with me on my way back. Make it the best you can find, and you won't lose by the exchange. The goddess spoke, and the next moment she was gone, vanishing like a bird through a hole in the roof. In Telemachus' heart she had implanted spirit and daring, and had brought the image of his father to his mind, even more strongly than before. He felt the change and was overcome with awe, for he realized a god had been with him. Then, godlike himself, he rejoined the suitors. He found them listening in silence to a song which their famous bard was singing to them about the Achaeans' return from Troy, and the disasters that Pallas Athena made them suffer. In her room upstairs, Penelope, the gracious daughter of Icarius, took in the words of his stirring ballad, and came down from her quarters by the steep staircase, not alone, but with 2 waiting women in attendance. When she came near her suitors, the great lady drew a fold of her shining veil across her cheeks, and took her stand by a pillar of the massive roof, with one of her faithful maids on either side. Then, bursting into tears, she broke in on the inspired minstrel. Phemius, she said, with your knowledge of the ballads that poets have made about the deeds of men or gods, you could enchant us with many other tales, rather than this. Choose one of those now for your audience here, and let them drink their wine in peace. But give us no more of your present song. It is too sad. It never fails to wring my heart. For in that catastrophe no one was dealt a heavier blow than I, who pass my days in mourning for the best of husbands, the man whose name rings through the land from Hellas to the heart of Argos. But the prudent Telemachus intervened. Mother, he said, why grudge our loyal bard the right to entertain us as the spirit moves him? Surely it is not the poets who are responsible for what happens, but Zeus himself, who deals with each of us toilers on earth as he sees fit. We cannot blame Phemius if he chooses to sing of the Danaans' tragic fate, for it is always the latest song that an audience applauds the most. You must be brave and nerve yourself to listen, for Odysseus is not the only one who has never returned from Troy. Troy was the end of many another man. So go to your quarters now and attend to your own work, the loom and the spindle, and tell the servants to get on with theirs. Making decisions must be men's concern, and mine in particular, for I am master in this house. Penelope was taken aback, but she retired to her own apartments, for she took her son's sensible words to heart. Attended by her maids, she went upstairs to her bedroom, and there she wept for Odysseus, her beloved husband, till bright-eyed Athena closed her eyes in sweet sleep. Meanwhile, in the shadowy hall, the suitors burst into uproar, and each man voiced a prayer that he might sleep with her. But the thoughtful Telemachus called them to order. Gentlemen, he cried, from you who court my mother, this is sheer insolence. For the moment, let us dine and enjoy ourselves, but quietly, for it is a lovely thing to listen to a minstrel such as we have here, with a voice like a god's. But in the morning, I propose that we all take our places in assembly, so that I can announce my demand that you quit my palace. Yes, you can feast yourselves somewhere else and eat your provisions in each other's homes. But if you think it a sounder scheme to destroy one man's estate and not make restitution, then eat your fill, while I pray that Zeus will bring a day of reckoning, when in this house I will destroy you, and not make restitution. It amazed them all that Telemachus should have the audacity to adopt this tone, and they could only bite their lips. But at last Antinous, Eupeithes' son, spoke up in answer. It is obvious that the gods are teaching you this bold and haughty way of speaking. Being your father's son, you are heir to this island realm. Heaven grant that you may never be its king. Antinous, the prudent Telemachus answered, it may disappoint you to learn that I would gladly accept that office from the hands of Zeus. Perhaps you argue that nothing worse could happen to a man. I, on the contrary, maintain that it is no bad thing to be a king, to see one's house enriched and one's authority enhanced. However, the Achaeans are not short of princes. Young and old, they swarm in sea-girt Ithaca. And since the great Odysseus is dead, let one of them succeed him. But I intend at least to be master of my own house and the servants whom my royal father won for me in war. This time it was Eurymachus, son of Polybus, who answered him. Telemachus, the gods must of course decide who is to be our king in sea-girt Ithaca. But by all means keep your own belongings and rule your own house. I pray that no one comes and lays violent hands on your property, as long as there are people in Ithaca. But, my dear Telemachus, do tell us something about that guest of yours. Where did the man come from? What account does he give of his country? Who might his people be? And what is his native land? Does he bring news of your father's coming? Or is he here on business of his own? He looked distinguished, but he jumped up and was gone so suddenly that he gave one no time to get to know him. Eurymachus, the sensible Telemachus replied, it is certain that my father will never come back, so I no longer believe any rumours whatever their source, nor have I any use for the skill of such diviners as my mother may call in for consultation. As for my guest, he is an old friend of my father from Tafos. He introduced himself as Mentes, the son of wise Anchialus, and chieftain of the seafaring Taphians. This is what Telemachus said, but in his heart he knew her for an immortal goddess. From then till dusk they gave themselves up to the pleasures of dancing and the delights of song. Night fell and found them still revelling, but at last they went off to bed, each to his own house. Telemachus, busy with his thoughts, retired to his own bedroom, a lofty chamber in the fine courtyard, with a clear view on every side. He was escorted by the faithful Euryclea, who carried a blazing torch. This Euryclea was the daughter of Ops and granddaughter of Paeson. Laertes had procured her at his own cost long ago, when she was still a girl, for the price of 20 oxen. He had treated her in his home with all the respect due to a loyal wife, though for fear of his wife's displeasure, he had not slept with her. It was she who now served as torchbearer to his grandson, and she, who of all the household women, loved him most, for she had nursed him as a child. Telemachus threw open the door of his solidly built room, sat down on the bed, and took off his soft tunic, which he put in the wise old woman's hands. After folding it and smoothing it out, she hung it on a peg by the wooden bedstead, and withdrew from the bedroom, pulling the door to by the silver handle, and shooting the bolt home by means of its leather thong. And there, all the night long, under his woolen blanket, Telemachus lay planning in his mind the journey that Athena had suggested. Book 2. The Debate in Ithaca. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, Odysseus' son got up from his bed and put his clothes on. He slung a sharp sword from his shoulder, bound a stout pair of sandals on his glistening feet, and strode from his bedroom looking like a god. He at once gave orders to the clear-voiced criers to call the long-haired Achaeans to assembly. The heralds cried their summons, and the people quickly gathered. When all had arrived and the assembly was complete, Telemachus himself set out for the meeting place, bronze spear in hand, escorted only by 2 hunting dogs. Athena endowed him with such supernatural grace that all eyes were turned on him in admiration when he came up. The elders made way for him as he took his father's seat. Egyptius, an old lord bent with years and rich in wisdom, was the first to speak. His own soldier son Antiphus had sailed with godlike Odysseus in the big ships to Ilium, the city of horses, only to be killed by the savage Cyclops in his cavern home when he made the last of his meals off Odysseus' men. And although he had 3 other sons, Eurynomus, who had joined with the suitors, and 2 who worked steadily on their father's estate, Antiphus was always in his mind. His grief was inconsolable, and it was with tears for this lost son that he now rose to address the gathering. My fellow countrymen, listen to what I have to say. Not once since the good Odysseus sailed have we been called to assembly or council meeting here. Who has summoned us now? Was it one of the young men or one of the older generation? And what is his pressing need? Perhaps he has heard of an army's approach and wishes to tell us the early news he has received. Or is there some other matter of public concern that he intends to raise for discussion? Good man, I say in any case. Our blessing on him. May Zeus reward him with his heart's desire. His auspicious words delighted Odysseus' son. Eager to speak, he left his seat without further ado, and took his stand in the middle of the assembly. The herald Paesoner, a shrewd, experienced counselor, thrust the speaker's staff into his hand, and Telemachus, turning first to old Egyptius, began. Venerable sir, you shall have the truth at once. The man who summoned this gathering is not far to seek. It was I. I am in great distress. Of an army's approach I have heard nothing to tell you, nor is it some other question of public concern that I propose to bring forward, but my own private business, the affliction, the double affliction that has fallen on my house. In the first place, I have lost my good father, who was once king among you here, and gentle as a father to you all. But now there is a far greater calamity, one which will bring my house to utter ruin and rob me of any livelihood I have. A crowd of suitors are pestering my mother with their unwanted attentions, and these suitors are actually the sons of those who are your leaders here, too cowardly to present themselves at her father's house, precarious to make terms for his daughter's hand with the claimant he prefers. They spend all day in and out of our house. They slaughter our oxen, our sheep, our fatted goats. They feast themselves and drink our sparkling wine, with never a thought for all the wealth that is being wasted. The truth is that there is no one like Odysseus in charge to purge the house of this blood. We are not able to defend it ourselves. We would prove miserably weak, quite untrained to fight. Yet I would willingly fight if I had the strength. For I tell you, the things they do are past all bearing. The destruction of my house is an injustice which you, gentlemen, should resent not only on your own behalf, but as a scandal to our neighbours who live round about. You should shrink from the wrath of the gods. Have you no fear that they may be outraged at your wickedness and turn on you? In the name of Olympian Zeus, in the name of Themis, who summons and dissolves the councils of men, I beg you, my friends, to leave me alone with my bitter grief. Unless by any chance you think that my good father harmed the well-grieved Achaeans out of malice, and you are trying to repay me with equal malice by the encouragement you give these men. If only it were you men of Ithaca who were devouring our treasure and our flocks, I think we should be better off. For in that case, we should not have far to look for compensation. We should simply hound you up and down the town for the restitution of our goods, till every item was repaid. As it is, you fill my heart with a pain for which I find no cure." As he spoke, his passion rose, and at the end, he burst into tears and flung the staff on the ground. A wave of pity swept through the gathering. Nobody made a move.
Where you found
Nobody
the
had the
chicken?
heart to give Telemachus a chance
say-
to try. And the silence was
D.
unbroken till Antinous retorted. "What a speech, Telemachus, and what a temper! So you'd put us to shame, would you? You fixed the blame on us? You are wrong. We suitors plead not guilty. It is your own mother, that incomparable schemer, who is the culprit. Listen, for 3 whole years, in fact close on 4, she has been leading us on, giving us all some grounds for hope, and in her private messages to each making promises that she has not the slightest intention of keeping. And here's another example of her duplicity. On her loom in her house, she set up a great web and began weaving a large and delicate piece of work. She said to us, 'My lords, my suitors, now that noble Odysseus is dead, restrain your ardor. Do not urge on this marriage till I have done this work, so that the threads I have spun may not be altogether wasted. It is a shroud for Lord Laertes. When he succumbs to the dread hand of remorseless death that stretches all men out at last, I must not risk the scandal there would be among my countrywomen here, if one who had amassed such wealth were laid to rest without a shroud.' That's what she said, and we magnanimously consented. So by day she used to weave at the great web, but every night had torches set beside it, and undid the work. For 3 years she took us in by this trick. A 4th began, and the seasons were slipping by, when one of her women who knew all about it gave her mistress away. We caught her unravelling her beautiful work, and she was forced reluctantly to complete it. Here is the suitor's answer, Telemachus, and I want you and all the people to be quite clear about it. Send your mother away and make her marry the man whom her father chooses and whom she prefers. She must beware of trying our young men's patience much further, and counting too much on the matchless gifts that she owes to Athena, her skill in fine handicraft, her excellent brain, and that genius she has for getting her way. In that respect, I grant she has no equal, not even in story. For of all the Achaean beauties of former times, not Tyro, nor Alcmene, nor Mycenae of the lovely diadem had at her command such wits as she. Yet, in the present case, Penelope has misused those wits. For I assure you that so long as she maintains this attitude that the gods have guided her to adopt, the suitors will continue to eat you out of house and home. She may be winning a great name for herself, but at what expense to you? So we will not return to our own estates, nor go anywhere else, until she makes her choice, and marries one of us." "Antinous," the thoughtful Telemachus replied, "it is quite impossible for me to cast out, against her will, the mother who bore me and who brought me up, with my father somewhere at the world's end, perhaps alive, perhaps dead. Think what I would have to pay Icarius if I were to send my mother back to him. I would suffer at his hands, and the gods would send me further disasters, because my mother, as she left, would call down on me the avenging Furies, and I would incur the wrath of my countrymen. You may be sure that I will never give the word. If you feel angry about this, then quit my palace, and feast somewhere else, eating your own food in each other's houses. But if you think it a sounder scheme to destroy one man's estate and not make restitution, then eat your fill, while I pray that Zeus will bring a day of reckoning, when in this house I will destroy you, and not make restitution." In answer to his words, Zeus the Thunderer urged 2 eagles into flight from the mountain top. For a while they sailed down the wind with outstretched pinions, wing to wing. But as soon as they were directly over the meeting place, where the sound of voices filled the air, they began to flap their wings and wheel about, glancing down at the faces of the crowd with looks foreboding death. Then with their talons they clawed at each other's cheeks and neck, and so swooped eastward over the housetops of the busy town. The people stared at the birds in amazement, and asked themselves what was to come of it. At last the old hero Halitherses, Mastor's son, spoke out. He knew more of bird lore and soothsaying than any man of his generation, and had his countrymen's welfare at heart when he rose now to address them. People of Ithaca, hear what I have to say, and my pronouncement is meant particularly for the suitors. A great calamity is about to engulf them. Odysseus is not going to be parted from his friends much longer. At this very moment, he is close at hand, sowing the seeds of a bloody doom for the suitors one and all, which means disaster to many others of us who live under the clear skies of Ithaca. Let us plan to stop these men before it happens. Or rather, won't they stop of their own accord? Which would be the better course? I am not unskilled in prophecy. I speak from ripe experience. Consider Odysseus. Has not everything happened as I warned that self-reliant man when he embarked for Ilium with the Argive army? I said he would return home in the 20th year, after much suffering, having lost all his comrades, and that no one would know him when he came. And now, all this is coming true. It was Eurymachus, Polybus' son, who rose to reply. That's enough, old man, he said. Run home and read omens to your children, or some disaster may happen to them. And leave me to interpret these signs. I'm better at that than you. After all, plenty of birds go about their business in the sunny air, but it isn't every one that is a bird of omen. As for Odysseus, he has met his fate abroad. If only you had shared his fate, we would then have been spared this tedious prophesying from your mouth, and you wouldn't be fueling Telemachus' anger. No doubt you expect him at some time to make a gift to your household. But now I will make a prophecy, and this will come true. If you, his senior, with the law of the ages at your disposal, misuse your eloquence to incite this young man to violence, in the first place, it will be all the worse for him. And secondly, for you, there will be the extremely unpleasant consequence that we shall impose on you a fine it will break your heart to pay. For Telemachus, here is my own advice. I give it openly before you all. Let him tell his mother to return to her father's house, where they will make arrangements for her wedding, and see that she has a generous dowry, as is only right for a much-loved daughter. Not till that is done can I see the sons of the Achaeans giving up their unwelcome suit. For we are afraid of no one at all, certainly not of Telemachus for all his rhetoric. Nor, old man, do we pay the slightest attention to those prophecies that fall from your lips. They come to nothing and only make you even more hated. No, Telemachus must see his wealth ruthlessly consumed without hope of restitution, so long as Penelope keeps us kicking our heels in this matter of her marriage. Meanwhile we stay, and instead of each seeking a suitable bride, we feed our hopes from day to day on the thought of the incomparable prize for which we are competing. Eurymachus, the thoughtful Telemachus replied. Book 2. The Debate in Ithaca. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, Odysseus' son got up from his bed and put his clothes on. He slung a sharp sword from his shoulder, bound a stout pair of sandals on his glistening feet, and strode from his bedroom looking like a god. He at once gave orders to declare Aegyptius, an old lord, bent with years and rich in wisdom. The heralds cried, and he sat down beside her. The men cast the horses off, climbed in and took their places at their oars. And now, out of the west, Athena of the flashing eyes called up for them a steady following wind and sent it singing over the wine-dark sea. Telemachus shouted to the crew to rig the ship, and they leapt to his orders. They hauled up the pine mast, placed it in its hollow box, made it fast with stays, and hoisted the white sail with plaited oxhide ropes. The sail billowed out in the wind, and a dark wave hissed loudly round her keel, as the vessel gathered way and sped on her course through the seas. When all was made fast in the swift black ship, they took out the mixing bowls, filled them to the brim with wine, and poured libations to the immortal gods who live forever, and above all, to the daughter of Zeus, the lady of the gleaming eyes. And all night long, and into the dawn, the ship ploughed her way through the sea. Book 3. Telemachus with Nestor. Leaving the waters of the splendid east, the sun leapt up into the brazen firmament to bring light to the immortals and to mortal men on the fruitful earth. The travellers now came to Pylos, the stately citadel of Neleus, where they found the people on the seashore sacrificing jet-black bulls to Poseidon, lord of the earthquake, god of the sable locks. There were 9 companies seated there, with 500 men in each, and every company had 9 bulls to sacrifice. They had just tasted the victim's entrails and were burning the thigh bones in the god's honour, as the travellers brought their trim ship to land. The crew brailed up and filled the sail, moored their vessel, and disembarked with Athena leading the way. Telemachus was the last to leave. The goddess with the flashing eyes turned to him now and said, "Telemachus, you must forget your diffidence. There is no occasion for it here at all. Why have you crossed the seas, if not to find out where your father's bones lie buried and how he met his end? Go straight up, then, to Nestor, the tamer of horses. We are here to learn the wisdom hidden in his heart. But you yourself must appeal to him to tell you the honest truth, though a man as wise as he is will not lie." "But, Mentor," the thoughtful Telemachus asked, "how am I to go up to him? How shall I greet him? I have had no practice in making speeches. It is embarrassing for a young man to question one so much his senior." "Telemachus," replied bright-eyed Athena, "where your own intelligence fails, a god will inspire you. For I think the gods have blessed both your birth and your progress to manhood." With this, Pallas Athena led off quickly, and Telemachus followed in the steps of the goddess, till they reached the place where the people of Pylos were assembled. There sat Nestor with his sons. Their followers around them were piercing meat with skewers, or roasting it in preparation for the banquet. But as soon as they caught sight of the strangers, they all made a move in their direction, took them by the hand, and invited them to join them. Nestor's son, Pisistratus, who was the first to reach them, took them both by the hand and gave them places at the banquet on downy fleeces spread over the sandy beach, near his brother Thrasymedes and his father. Then he helped them to the victim's inner parts, filled a gold cup with wine, and welcomed Pallas Athena, daughter of Zeus, who bears the aegis, with these words: "Pray to the god, my friend. This feast that you find us holding is in the Lord Poseidon's honor. When you have made your drink offering and your prayer, as our rites dictate, pass on the cup of mellow wine to your companion here, so that he may do the same. For he too must be a worshipper of the immortal gods, of whom all men stand in need. But since he is the younger, in fact a man of my own age, I hand this golden beaker to you first." And he placed the cup of sweet wine in Athena's hands. The goddess was delighted at the good manners which the young man had shown in giving her the golden beaker first, and at once began an earnest prayer to the Lord Poseidon. Hear me, Poseidon, sustainer of earth, and do not grudge us, your suppliants, the fulfillment of our wishes. First of all, grant glory to Nestor and his sons. Consider next these others, and recompense all in Pylus for their sumptuous offerings. Grant lastly that Telemachus and I may successfully accomplish the task that brings us here, in our swift black ship, and afterwards reach home safely. So the goddess prayed, and as each petition left her lips, she herself made its fulfillment sure. Then she passed the fine two-handled beaker to Telemachus, and Odysseus' son repeated her prayers. The outer flesh from the victims was now roasted and drawn off the spits. Portions were carved for all, and they began their sumptuous feast. When they had satisfied their appetite and thirst, Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, said, "Now that our visitors have eaten well, it is the right moment to put some questions to them and inquire who they are. Who are you, friends? From what port have you sailed over the highways of the sea? Is yours a trading venture? Or are you sailing the seas recklessly, like roving pirates, who risk their lives to ruin other people?" Telemachus, inspired by Athena, who was anxious for him to question the king about his father's disappearance, and so win a good name among men, now plucked up the courage to make him a spirited reply. "Nestor, son of Neleus, great glory of the Greeks, you ask where we come from. I will tell you. We are from Ithaca, which lies at the foot of Mount Neon. We have come on private, not on public business. I am searching through the length and breadth of the land for news of my noble father, the long-suffering Odysseus, who, it is said, fought by your side years ago at the sack of Troy. We can account for all the others who took part in the war. We know where each man met his pitiful death. But Zeus has wrapped even the death of Odysseus in utter mystery, and no one can tell us for certain when he died, whether he was the victim of some hostile tribe on land, or whether he was lost at sea in Amphitrite's waves. So I have come here to plead with you in the hope that you will tell me the truth about my father's unhappy end. If by any chance you witnessed it yourself, or heard the story from some wanderer like him. For if ever a man was born to suffer, it was he. Do not soften your account out of pity or concern for my feelings, but faithfully describe the scene that met your eyes. I beseech you, if ever my good father Odysseus in the hard years of war at Troy gave you his word and kept it, remember what he did, and tell me all you know." "Ah, my friend," exclaimed Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer. "What memories the name of Troy brings back. The miseries we fierce Achaeans endured there. Raid after raid across the misty seas in search of plunder wherever Achilles led. Fight after fight around the very walls of royal Priam's town. There our best men fell. There warlike Ajax lies. There lies Achilles. There Patroclus, wise in counsel as the gods. There too Antilochus, my own dear son, as strong as he was handsome, a fast runner, and what a fighter too. Nor is that the full sum of what the noble Achaeans endured at Troy. There is no man on earth who could unfold to you the whole disastrous tale, not though you sat and questioned him for 6 years, by which time you would have grown weary and gone home. For 9 years we struggled to bring them down by every stratagem we could devise, but Zeus made it very difficult for us to achieve victory. And all the time there was not a man that dared to match his wits against the admirable Odysseus, who in every kind of strategy proved himself supreme. Your father, if you really are his son. Indeed, I cannot help looking at you in awe. You talk exactly as he did, and I should have sworn no young man could so resemble him in speech. In all those years, whether at the General Assembly or in the Council of the Kings, not once did Odysseus and I find ourselves speaking on opposite sides. We seemed to share a single mind. So well did we agree when, with our good sense and judgment, we advised the Argives on the best policies. After we had destroyed Priam's towering city, we left in our ships. But then the gods scattered the fleet. Zeus planned disaster for our homeward journey, because we had not all behaved sensibly and honestly, and many came to grief through the fatal anger of the bright-eyed daughter of that mighty sire. It happened like this. She began by making the two sons of Atreus quarrel. Acting on the spur of the moment, and with no regard for procedure, they summoned the whole Achaean army to assemble at sunset, so that the troops arrived drunk, and told them the reason for the assembly. Menelaus put it to them all that their first concern should be to get to their distant homes across the seas. But this was not at all to Agamemnon's liking. He was for keeping them there and making ceremonial offerings to Athena, in the hope of appeasing her terrible wrath, not realizing in his folly how implacable she would prove. For it is not so easy to divert the immortal gods from their purpose. Well, the pair of them stood there exchanging hard words, till the soldiers, themselves divided in opinion, broke up the assembly in indescribable uproar. That night we rested, nursing vindictive feelings against our comrades in arms, for Zeus was making ready to strike us the fatal blow. In the morning, half of us ran our ships down into the tranquil sea, and stowed in them our spoils and the captive women in their low-girdled dresses. Then, though the rest still held back and stayed where they were with Agamemnon, the commander-in-chief, our party embarked and set out. Our ship sailed fast, for a god had levelled the deep swell of the sea. We soon reached Tenedos, and there, eager to be home, we sacrificed to the gods. But Zeus had no intention of letting us reach home so soon, and he mercilessly stirred dissension among us once more. As a result, one squadron swung the curved prows of their vessels round and turned back towards Troy. These were the followers of Odysseus, that wise and subtle king, falling in once more with the wishes of Agamemnon, son of Atreus. But I, well aware of the gods' sinister designs, fled with the massed ships that formed my company. Warlike Diomedes did the same, bringing his party with him, and later on auburn-haired Menelaus followed too. He caught us up at Lesbos, where we were pondering over the long sea journey, whether to sail north of the rugged coast of Chios and by way of Syria, keeping that island on our left, or to sail south of Chios past the windy heights of Mimas. We prayed for a sign, and the god made it clear that we should cut straight across the open sea to Euboea, to get out of harm's way as quickly as possible. A whistling wind blew up, and our ships made splendid running down the teeming seaways, reaching Eurystus during the night. And many a bull's thigh we laid on Poseidon's altar after spanning that weary stretch of water. It was on the fourth day that the company of Diomedes, son of Tydeus, the tamer of horses, brought their fine craft to anchor in Argos. But I held on for Pylos, and the breeze never dropped from the moment when the god made it blow. Consequently, dear child, I got back without any news of the men we had left behind, and I have no idea who escaped or who was not. But all the news that has come to me as I sit here at home you shall have, as is only right. And I'll keep nothing back. In the first place, they tell me that the Myrmidon spearmen reached home in safety under the great Achilles' noble son, and that Poias' son, the brilliant Philoctetes, fared equally well. Again, Idomeneus brought all his men to Crete, all, that is, who had survived the war. The sea got none from him. As for Agamemnon, though you live far away, you must have heard how he had no sooner got back than he fell a wretched victim to Aegisthus' plot. And a grim reckoning there was for Aegisthus. which shows what a good thing it is when a man dies for a son to survive him, as Orestes survived to take revenge on the treacherous Aegisthus who had killed his noble father. So you, my friend, and what a tall and splendid young man you have become, be as brave as Orestes. Then future generations will sing your praises. The thoughtful Telemachus replied, King Nestor, son of Neleus, great glory of the Achaeans, that was revenge indeed. Orestes' fame will travel throughout Achaean lands and live in song for generations. Ah, if the gods would only give me strength like his to exact revenge for the suitors' vicious crimes, their willful disregard of what is right, and the ways they have humiliated me. But they have no such happiness in store for me, nor for my father. I must just endure. My friend, said Nestor the Gerenian charioteer, now that your own remarks have put me in mind of it, they do say a whole crowd of your mother's suitors are wreaking havoc in your house as uninvited guests. Tell me, do you tamely submit to this, or have the people of Ithaca been listening to some rumor inspired by God that has turned their hearts against you? Who knows whether someday Odysseus may not come back, alone perhaps, or with all his followers, and pay these suitors out for their violence. I only wish that bright-eyed Athena could show towards you some of the loving care she devoted to your illustrious father in the course of our hard campaigns at Troy. For never in my life have I seen the gods display such open affection as Pallas Athena showed in her championship of Odysseus. Ah, if only she would love and care for you like that. Some of those gentlemen would soon have all thoughts of courtship knocked out of their heads forever. Venerable Lord, said the thoughtful Telemachus, I see no hope whatever of your words proving true. You speak of the impossible. You amaze me. For all my hopes, that will never happen, even if the gods were to will it. Telemachus, the goddess of the flashing eyes exclaimed, what are you saying? A god who wills it can bring anyone safely home, however far away he may be. And for myself, I would rather live through untold hardships to reach home in the end and see that happy day, than come straight back and die at my own hearth, as Agamemnon died by the wiles of his wife and Aegisthus. But it is our common lot to die, and the gods themselves cannot rescue even one they love, when death that stretches all men out lays its dread hand upon him. Mentor, the thoughtful Telemachus replied, let us not discuss these painful matters any more. We can no longer count on my father's return. The gods who never die have already set his feet on the dark path that leads to death. But there is something else I would like to ask Nestor, whose knowledge of men's ways and thoughts is unrivaled. They tell me he has been king through 3 generations, and when I look at him, I seem to gaze on immortality itself. Nestor, son of Neleus, tell me what really happened. How did Imperial Agamemnon, son of Atreus, meet his end? Where was Menelaus? And by what cunning snare did that treacherous Aegisthus contrive to kill a man far braver than himself? Was Menelaus away from Achaean Argos and wandering abroad? Is that why Aegisthus plucked up the courage to strike? My child, Nestor the Gerenian charioteer answered, I will tell you the whole story. You can imagine for yourself what would have happened had Agamemnon's brother, auburn-haired Menelaus, come back from Troy and caught Aegisthus in the house alive. No mound would have honoured his remains. Flung on the plain outside the city walls, he'd have made meat for the dogs and birds of prey, and there's no woman in Achaea who would have shed a tear for him. His was indeed no petty crime. While we who were besieging Troy toiled at heroic tasks, he spent his leisured days right in the heart of Argos, where the horses graze, busy charming Agamemnon's wife with his seductive talk. At first, Queen Clytemnestra turned a deaf ear to his dishonourable schemes. She was a sensible woman, and besides, she had a minstrel with her, to whom Agamemnon, when he left for Troy, had given orders to watch over his queen. But when the fatal day came, appointed by the gods for her to yield, Aegisthus took this minstrel to a desert isle, left him there as carrion for the birds of prey, and carried Clytemnestra off to his own house, fond lover, willing lady. After this great achievement, he heaped the holy altars of the gods with thigh bones, and hung the temple walls with fine fabrics and gold, thank offerings for a success beyond his wildest dreams. Meanwhile, we were sailing together over the sea from Troy, Menelaus and I, the best of friends. But when we were abreast of the sacred cape of Sunium, where Attica juts out into the sea, Phoebus Apollo shot one of his painless arrows at Menelaus' helmsman and killed him, with the tiller of the running ship still in his hands. This man, Phrontis, son of Anetor, had been the world's best steersman in a gale, and Menelaus, though anxious to journey on, was kept at Sunium till he could bury his comrade with the proper rites. But when he too had got away over the wine-dark sea in those great ships of his, and had run as far as the steep headland of Malea, far-seeing Zeus brought disaster on their journey, and sent them a howling gale with giant waves. Then and there he split the fleet in two. He drove one group towards Crete and the Sidonian settlements on the river Iardanus. Now, where the lands of Gortin end, out in the misty sea, there is a precipitous cliff that falls abruptly to the water, and the southwesterly gales drive the great rollers against a headland to the west, in towards Phaestus, with nothing but this puny reef to keep their violence in check. When one party reached this spot, the crews by a hair's breadth escaped destruction, though their ships were splintered on the rocks by the fury of the seas. Meanwhile, Menelaus, with the remaining 5 vessels of his blue-prowed fleet, was driven on by wind and wave to Egypt. And so it was that he was cruising in those foreign lands, amassing a fortune in goods and gold, while Aegisthus schemed this wickedness at home. After he had killed Agamemnon, the usurper reigned in golden Mycenae and kept the people in subjection for 7 years. But the 8th brought him disaster, in the shape of Orestes. For that brave youth, returning from Athens, killed Aegisthus, his noble father's murderer, and so the slayer was slain. When Orestes had done the deed, he invited his friends to a funeral banquet for his hateful mother and the cowardly Aegisthus. And on the self-same day, he was joined by Menelaus of the loud war cry, bringing in all the treasures that had filled his holds. Be warned yourself, my friend. Don't stray too long or too far from home, nor leave your wealth unguarded with such a set of arrogant brutes in the place, unless you want them to share it out, to eat up all you have, so making your journey futile. I do urge you, however, to pay Menelaus a visit, for he has only just returned home from a region so remote that one might well give up all hope of return once the winds had blown one astray into that wide expanse of sea, which is so vast and perilous that even the birds cannot cross it in a year. So set off now with your ship and crew, or if you prefer to go by land, I have a chariot and horses at your disposal, and my sons are at your service too, to escort you to lovely Lacedaemon, where auburn-haired Menelaus lives. Appeal to him in person if you want the truth from his lips, though as wise a man as he is, will not lie. As Nestor came to an end, the sun went down and darkness fell. It was the bright-eyed goddess Athena who spoke next. Venerable Lord, your tale was well told, but come, cut up the victims' tongues and mix the wine, so that we can pour out offerings to Poseidon and the other immortals before we think of sleeping. It is time for bed, now that the light has faded into dark. should return home. It was the daughter of Zeus who had spoken. Her words did not fall on deaf ears. The squires sprinkled their hands with water, while the young attendants filled the mixing bowls to the brim, and then, after pouring a few drops first in each man's cup, they served them all with wine. The tongues were thrown into the flames. The company rose and sprinkled libations on them. And when they had made their offerings and drunk their fill, Athena and Prince Telemachus both made a move to return to their hollow ship. But Nestor stopped them, protesting loudly. May Zeus and the other immortal gods forbid that you should go to your ship and turn aside from my house as though it belonged to some destitute pauper who hasn't enough blankets and rugs for himself and his guests to sleep between in comfort. Indeed, I have good bedding for all, and I swear that the son of my friend Odysseus shall not lie down to sleep on his ship's deck, so long as I am alive, or sons survive me here to entertain all visitors that come to my door. Well said, my lord, replied the goddess of the flashing eyes. And it is right for Telemachus to accept your invitation. He will go with you now and sleep in your palace, while I return to the black ship to reassure the men and tell them everything. For I am the only senior in the party. All the rest are young men of much the same age as the great-hearted Telemachus, and follow him out of companionship. I intend to sleep there by the black ship's hull tonight, and in the morning to set out on a visit to the great-hearted Corconians, who owe me a long-standing debt, not a small one either. But since Telemachus has become your guest, send him on in a chariot with one of your sons, and give him the fastest and strongest horses in your stable. As she finished, bright-eyed Athena took the form of a vulture and flew off. They were all amazed. The old king marveled at the sight. Telemachus, dear boy,
Hello,
exclaimed,
beautifuls.
seizing him by the hand. There is no chance that you will ever be a coward or weakling when, young as you are, you already have your guardian gods at your side. For of all that live on Olympus, this was no other than the daughter of Zeus, the august lady of Triton, who honored your noble father too among the Argives. Goddess, be gracious and grant fame to me and to my sons, and to my honored wife. In return you shall have a yearling heifer, broad in the brow, whom no one yet has broken
You
in,
just so cute.
and led beneath the oak. She shall be sacrificed to you with gilded horns. That was his prayer, and Pallas Athena heard him. And now the Gerenian charioteer Nestor led the way towards his stately home, followed by his sons and his sons-in-law. When they came to the royal palace, they took their places on the seats and chairs, and the old man prepared a bowl of mellow wine for his guests, from a jar that had stood for 10 years until the moment when the maid undid the cap and opened it. When the old king had mixed a bowl of this vintage, he poured a little out, with earnest prayers to Athena, daughter of Zeus, who holds the aegis. They made their libations and quenched their thirst, after which the rest went to their homes for the night. But Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, arranged for the noble Odysseus' son Telemachus to sleep at the palace itself, on a wooden bedstead in the echoing portico, with the spearman Pisistratus, that leader of men, next to him. He was the only unmarried son left at home. The king himself retired to rest in his room at the back of the high building, where the queen his wife prepared his bed. When dawn came, fresh and rosy-fingered, Nestor the Gerenian charioteer got up from his bed, went out, and seated himself on a smooth white bench which stood, gleaming and polished, in front of his lofty doors. Here his father Neleus used to sit and give counsel as wise as the gods. But he had long since died and gone to Hades' hall. So now Nestor of Gerenia sat there in his turn, scepter in hand, a warden of the Achaean race. His sons all came from their rooms and gathered round him, Echephron and Stratius, Perseus and Aretus. and the noble Thrasymedes. The heroic Pisistratus came last, and made the sixth. The godlike Telemachus was ushered to a seat at their side, and Nestor the Gerenian charioteer now made his wishes known. Quick, my dear sons, do what I want so that I can pay my devotions to Athena, who of all the gods has first claim upon them, since it was she who came in person to me at the gods' sumptuous banquet. One of you go to the meadow for a heifer to be brought here as quickly as the cowherd can drive her, and one go down to great-hearted Telemachus' black ship and bring all his crew here except two. Another summon the goldsmith Laerces to gild the heifer's horns. The rest of you stay with me here, and tell the servants indoors to prepare a feast in the palace, and to fetch seats and firewood and fresh water. They all busily set about their tasks. The heifer came from the meadows. Bold Telemachus' crew came from his good ship. The smith came, equipped with the bronze tools of his trade, anvil, hammer, and the strong tongs he used for working gold. Athena also came to accept the sacrifice. Then Nestor, the old charioteer, gave out the gold, with which the smith gilded the heifer's horns by way of embellishment, to please the goddess's eye. Next, Stratius and Echephron led the heifer forward by the horns. Aretus came from the storeroom carrying in his right hand a flowered bowl of lustral water, and in the other a basket with the barley meal. The stalwart Thrasymedes, gripping a sharp axe, stood by to strike the victim down, and Perseus held the dish to catch its blood. The old charioteer Nestor now started the ritual with the lustral water and the scattered grain, and offered up his earnest prayers to Athena as he began the sacrifice by throwing a tuft of hair from its head on the fire. When they had prayed and sprinkled the barley meal, Nestor's son, the high-spirited Thrasymedes, stepped up and struck. The axe cut through the
Hello.
tendons of the heifer's neck, and it collapsed. At this, the women raised their celebratory cry. Nestor's daughters and his daughter-in-law, and his honoured wife Eurydice, Clymenus' eldest daughter. The men lifted the heifer's head from the trodden earth and held it up, while that leader of men, Pisistratus, cut its throat. When the dark blood had gushed out and life had left the heifer's body, they swiftly dismembered the carcass, cut out the thigh bones in the usual way, wrapped them in folds of fat and laid raw meat above them. The venerable king burnt these on the firewood, sprinkling red wine over the flames, while the young men gathered round with 5-pronged forks in their hands. When the thighs were burnt up, and they had tasted the inner parts, they carved the rest into small pieces, pierced them with skewers, and held the sharp ends to the fire till all was roasted. The beautiful Polycaste, King Nestor's youngest daughter, now bathed Telemachus. When she had bathed him and rubbed him with olive oil, she gave him a tunic and arranged a fine cloak round his shoulders, so that he stepped from the bath looking like an immortal god. He then went and sat down by Nestor, the shepherd of the people. When they had roasted the outer flesh and taken it off the skewers, they sat down to dine, with squires to wait on them and fill their golden cups with wine. After they had satisfied their appetite and thirst, Nestor, the Gerenian charioteer, said, "Now, my sons, fetch Telemachus a pair of long-maned horses and harness them to a chariot, so that he can be on his way." They obeyed him promptly, and soon had a pair of fast horses harnessed to a chariot, in which the housekeeper had packed bread and wine together with delicacies of the kind that the favourites of the gods eat. Telemachus took his place in the handsome chariot, and Nestor's son, that leader of men Pisistratus, got in beside him, took the reins in his hands, and flicked the horses with the whip to urge them forward. The willing pair flew off towards the plains, putting the high city of Pylos behind them, and all day long the yoke rose and fell on their necks. The sun went down, and all the ways grew dark. They reached Pheræ, where they drove up to the house of Diocles, son of Ortilochus, whose father was Alpheus. There they spent the night and received the gifts that hospitality dictates. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, they harnessed their horses once again and mounted the burnished chariot. Out past the echoing portico and through the gates they drove. A flick of the whip to speed them on, and the pair flew on with a will. They came to the wheat plains and hastened on to their journey's end with all the speed of their thoroughbred horses. The sun went down, and all the ways grew dark.